I would like to call this meeting to order. Welcome to all, and thank you for coming out to tonight's meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission. We're going to take roll call. Commissioner Nancy Golden.
Present.
Commissioner Brian Patterson.
Present.
Commissioner Sean Hutchinson is absent. Commissioner Bill Lewis is absent. Commissioner Jay Otlowski is absent. Commissioner Jeff Nelson.
Present.
Commissioner Mitchell Bolnick is absent, and I'm Commissioner Lee Strickman. We're going to start with the opening statement. This commission is composed of Peoria citizens who have been appointed by the City Council to serve on the commission as a civic responsibility without compensation. Our duty is to study and review planning and zoning issues within the City of Peoria and then forward our recommendations to the City Council. All hearings are conducted in accordance with the rules for procedure and Robert's Rules of Order. Each case will be called in the order in which it appears on the agenda unless otherwise announced during the meeting. In the interest of maintaining a fair and efficient hearing, the Commission adheres to the following steps. Chairperson calls the case, staff gives a brief report and recommendation, applicant gives a presentation, opposition and support gives testimony, generally limited to 3 minutes per speaker. Applicant may give a rebuttal, commission discussion, and decision. Anyone wishing to speak must complete a speaker's request form and hand it to the planning assistant on my left. Please be as brief as possible and do not repeat statements already made by others. Anyone wishing to protest the decision of a commission public hearing item must request a second public hearing before the City Council. The request must be submitted in writing to the Planning and Community Development Department within 10 days after the Commission's hearings. All Commission recommendations on public hearing items move forward to a regular City Council meeting. The City Council will then act on the recommendation of the Commission. They may concur with the decision, modify it, or overturn it. We welcome citizens' comments, and as fellow citizens of Peoria, we thank you in advance for your participation. This is the final call to submit speaker request forms. If anyone wishes to speak, please fill out a speaker request form and provide it to the staff seated to my left at the end of the dais. The consent agenda is for items that are routine in nature and consist of 5 items tonight. 1C is the disposition of absence, discussion and possible action to approve the absence of Commissioner Nancy Golden and alternate member Mitchell Bolnick from the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting held on October 20th, 2016. 2C, minutes, discussion and possible action to approve the minutes of the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting held on October 20th, 2016. 3C, CU 16-0014, Peoria Mini Storage. Discussion and possible action to consider a request for a conditional use permit, CUP, to allow an air-conditioned self-storage building within an existing self-storage and outdoor RV storage property. 4C, CU 16-0021, Mr. Shine Car Wash. Discussion and possible action to consider a request for a conditional use permit to construct a new car wash on 2.8 acres located north of the northwest corner of Happy Valley Road and Lake Pleasant Parkway. And 5C, CU 16-0025, Panera Bread. Discussion and possible action to consider a request for a conditional use permit to modify the existing conditional use permit for outdoor dining. Do any commissioners have any questions and or comments?
I'd like to ask,
Commissioner Golden?
I'd like to ask a question of the staff.
Okay.
On the Panera Bread, it appears to me that they are taking up the sidewalk area. Is that correct? Is there going to be a pass-through there for people to walk?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Golden, they are removing portions of sidewalk, but they're making other portions more accessible so that they can accommodate the desired drive-through on the northern portion of the suite.
So you'll have to walk through, I mean, I go there all the time. So if you're parking on the north side of that building and we walk in, you'll have to walk through the sitting area, through the outdoor dining?
There will be a sidewalk that'll accommodate pedestrians coming from the north side. However, they would need to walk around the trash enclosure, and there's designated alternate paving to locate where those pedestrians need to cross to ensure safe movements with the
Okay, but you're not
traffic.
pushing the pedestrians out into the road?
No, ma'am.
Okay, great, thank you. That's the only question I had, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions from the commissioners? Do I have a motion?
Yeah, Madam Chairman, I move for approval of consent agenda.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Please vote. And that passes unanimously. Thank you. Right, anybody that was here for any of those items can go. Good night. Okay, we now move on to new business, and the first agenda item under new business is 6R, Sign Code Modernization Study Session. Staff, please present your report.
Yes. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Madam Chair, members of the commission, I apologize for that. We would ask the commission to reorder items 6R and 7R. The applicant is present for CU 16-0026, and in order to allow them to not have to sit through a sign code presentation.
Okay, do I need a motion for that?
No, you do not. You have a prerogative as chair to take them out of order, so you can proceed.
Okay, thank you. Then the next agenda item is going to be 7R, CU 16-0026, Dutch Brothers Coffee. Staff, please present your report.
Madam Chair, members of the Commission, my name is Laura Deaver, and I'll be presenting staff's report this evening. The proposed location is for a Dutch Brothers drive-through coffee shop. This is a new facility. It is located north of the northeast corner of 83rd Avenue and Thunderbird. It would be located on the undeveloped commercial property within the Arrowhead Commerce Center, which was formerly known as the Griffin Commercial Plaza. Given the site's location near existing and proposed residential in the area, the applicant has filed a request for a conditional use permit to construct the new drive-through coffee shop and to allow a covered patio area. The subject site is located within the commercial shopping center, so for context purposes, the existing land uses directly to the north would be the commercial shopping center. Then as you go proceeding further would be offices and multifamily. To the east is currently vacant land. However, the L-shaped piece, as you see, that was the subject of a rezoning case not that long ago that came before commission and later to city council, and that was T83. The land uses to the south and to the west are also commercial shopping center. So for a detailed view of the surrounding businesses, you can look to the graphic on your screen. Basically, Culver's is directly north of the proposed site. You do have frozen yogurt, a nail salon, and Jimmy John's directly to the south. To the west, you have Filiberto's, Express Oil, and CVS. The proposed coffee shop is intended to offset the existing demand at the existing Dutch Brothers coffee shop, which is located at the Sprouts Commercial Center, which is to the south and to the west of this proposed site. The application before you this evening is for a proposed building that is approximately 846 square feet in size. It contains a 1,037 square foot outdoor patio area. So it is essentially double the existing facility that is currently at that other location. There are 2 drive-through lanes that curve in a U shape, and I'll try to use the mouse to show you. They come from the west, they go through here. There is actually a red light, green light to assist people going through the drive-through, and then you proceed to the north of the building, get your coffee here, and then proceed out. Service is accomplished in a similar manner to the existing facility. It is by an order runner or a person who stands there with an iPod, taps in your order, and they use that system in lieu of a squawk box or like a typical drive-through restaurant. There is queuing, aka car storage, on this facility for approximately 33 vehicles. The city's typical requirement is 100 feet, which would equate to approximately 4 to 5 vehicles. So they are proposing 6 times the amount that the minimum city requirements in this case. It would also have approximately double the capacity of the existing facility in terms of queuing space. Thus, staff anticipates that the site will actually offset demand at the existing facility. Additional amenities include the proposed patio, which will have movable chairs and tables. It will also have recorded playing music. Excuse me. Music levels will be restricted to a certain decibel level where they cannot be heard 40 feet away from the building, and I'll talk about that further in my presentation. Proposed hours of operation. The drive-through portion of this use is going to be 24 hours. It's intended to be 24 hours. The patio area would be Sunday to Thursday, 5 a.m. to 11 p.m., Friday and Saturday from 5 a.m. to midnight. They will block off the patio area once it closes down. And then Dutch Brothers staff will be performing parking lot checks adjacent to their site where they can sweep up the debris and et cetera after each shift. So that's how they propose to maintain the site. In terms of our analysis, the actual dining and patio area is governed by 4 criteria within the zoning ordinance, and I'll kind of go through those more in depth. Outdoor use and patio and dining standards. First is the patio area needs to be immediately adjacent to the restaurant. In this case, it is directly attached. The purple that you see on the screen would be the building. The blue would be the patio. Second criteria is that the patio use does not interfere with pedestrian access, fire lanes, traffic, visibility, etc. This proposal does comply with that standard. Next, third one would be a patio area that may exceed 25% of the gross floor area of the building with sufficient mitigating measures. Now, this requirement actually was intended to minimize the scale of outdoor patio areas for bars, taverns, and late night entertainment uses, and doesn't necessarily apply 100% analogous to this particular type of facility. Due to the small scale of this use, an even modestly sized patio, you would exceed that 25% limitation. So we believe in this case that the waiver would be appropriate. Additional limitations is the fourth criteria. Additional limitations may be considered by commission for mitigation purposes on an as-needed basis. So in this case, staff considered proposed business hours, building and patio size, and the compatibility and context of the use in relation to the surrounding businesses. So let me kind of touch on that briefly now. In our analysis, we found that the outdoor dining area and the drive-through coffee shop is consistent with the surrounding land uses and the context of the area in question. Why do we think this? Because there's a number of restaurants within the area and several with drive-through lanes that are located within the vicinity. For example, Culver's directly to the north of the proposed site. The patio is over 400 feet from the edge of the property, it's shown in blue, from the edge of the property to the closest building that is in the existing residential area, which would be the Waterford apartments directly to the north. It's also 300 feet, the building and the patio would be 300 feet if measured from that patio to the first building when T83 eventually develops. So there is a distance away from this use to the existing and the proposed residential uses. Furthermore, the patio on Culver's is approximately 110 feet away from the edge of the building to their patio area. So the proposed music levels are not intended and should not disturb the Culver's patrons at that location. So if any issues arise with the operation of this business, the zoning ordinance also provides the planning manager the ability to relook at the conditional use permit, and they may revoke, modify, or suspend as needed based on those criteria. However, as a result of our analysis, in staff's judgment, the proposed use is an appropriate use at this location. So the application was properly noticed and the site plan was posted in accordance with the zoning ordinance, and staff received no opposition or support to this request in terms of public outreach. So based on our key findings, the three that you see in front of us, the first one being the request is consistent with the City of Peoria zoning ordinance and compatible with the uses in the surrounding area. The second, that the use, in conjunction with the conditions of approval, will operate in a manner that will not negatively impact the adjoining uses. And the applicant owner has submitted and signed a notarized Proposition 207 waiver, which will be recorded with the conditions outlined within the staff report. So based on those key findings, staff is recommending approval of case CU 16-0026, subject to the conditions in the staff report. So that concludes my presentation, and I'll answer any questions that you may have at this time.
Do any commissioners have any questions of staff? Okay, I do. You mentioned the other Dutch Brothers that's right around the corner. Is that one going to be closing down, or is that this is two separate places?
Madam Chair, members of the commission, the applicant has indicated the intent is to have both facilities operate at the same time. So this one would actually supplement the existing and take the demand off the existing facility. So what you will have is both facilities operating at the same time.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from commissioners?
I'm sorry.
Okay, Commissioner Nelson? Okay, it didn't come up, but that's okay.
That's my fault. I apologize. Ms. Stever, just a quick question. Can you bring up that map again showing the site plan itself?
Okay.
I don't remember which slide that was.
This one?
Go back a little further. I guess that go right back to the one you just had.
That full-size one, kind of?
The other one that you just had.
This one?
Yeah, let's stick with that one.
Okay.
Not as good as I thought it was be. It's changed my mind. Can you go back to the one that was right before it? Sorry.
It's okay.
Can you describe to me how they will be accessing this location? Is it off that driveway to the south coming in where between the Jimmy John's, that center, and here, or is it to the north? I'm having trouble seeing where the access is.
Let me try to use this one in particular. I think this may
Okay.
help, Madam
Actually,
Chair,
it looks a little
members of
better.
the
I can see it a
commission.
little better here.
So Commissioner Nelson, to answer your question, there is a number of driveways that can be utilized for this facility. The closest one darkly would be off of 83rd, as you see. So there's driveway access between the frozen yogurt and this particular driveway here. There's also a driveway location over in Culver's that they can come, they come down and around and can enter this particular direction as well. There is right-in access down below over at the corner that you see where the mouse is. They also have additional access. Let me see if I can. This one will work as well. So there's additional access off of T-Bird in 1, 2, 3 locations. So 3 locations off of Thunderbird. There's 1 location adjacent between Jimmy John's and Culver's, or excuse me, Jimmy John's on the site, and 1 coming off of Ludlow.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from commissioners? No? Okay. I have opened the public hearing. Is the applicant present? Do you wish to speak? Your choice. Okay. Do you agree with staff recommendations? Yes, Okay. Does any of the commissioners have any questions of the applicant? Commissioner Nelson?
I actually have a question for the applicant.
Okay, then could you please come to the podium, state your name and address for the record?
My name is Bill Cantieri, and my address is Phoenix, Arizona.
Thank you. Just a quick question. Looking at your other location, I'm constantly amazed at how many cars lining up for coffee at that location. So obviously the demand is there. You've got 2 lanes here. Are we fairly confident that those 2 lanes are going to be able to handle all the additional traffic that you expect to get here? And my concern is, and I'll tell you why I'm raising the question, is having traffic backing up onto 83rd Avenue. And that's why I was asking about the ingress and access to the site. So have you done some traffic studies? Based on what you know, tell me your confidence level.
Yeah, absolutely, yes. Our confidence level is very high on this. So we did have a independent traffic study performed looking at the existing location. The maximum queue that they found even during peak periods was 22 cars. So we decided, because this was a larger site that we had available to us, when we designed it for the 33 cars, to make sure that should popularity increase even more, that it could handle it, because that it was just a nightmare scenario backing up onto 83rd Avenue that we never want to be a problem, and so we designed in with that extra capacity.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Okay, any other comments from commissioners? I am now closing the public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I have no more questions, do I have a motion? Commissioner Patterson?
Yeah, Madam Chairman, I move for approval of this item.
Okay. And do I have a second? Commissioner Golden?
I'll second that.
Okay. Please vote. And that passes unanimously. Okay, so now we are, oh, you passed. Thank you. Now we're going to go back to 6R, which was the Sign Code Modernization Study Section. Staff, please present your report.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. So as you may recall, we initially discussed the sign code project back in March with the Commission and had given you at that time a brief description of the process that we would be undertaking. As you may remember, this is a city-initiated project. Our sign code was in need of an overhaul, and some recent legal determinations made it such that cities across the country are updating their sign codes to be compliant with the Supreme Court decision in Reed v. Town of Gilbert. So with that, since March, staff has been underway with drafts, and you'll see in at your spot, you have a copy of a excerpt of our recent draft code that we'll get into a little bit during this presentation. So this amendment would completely remove the existing Article 14-34 signs from the zoning ordinance and replace it with a new code with the goals of having an increased legal enforceability for our sign regulations, as I said, in compliance with the Reed versus Town of Gilbert decision, enhance the user-friendliness of the document, as well as promote a high-quality aesthetic environment and foster an atmosphere that increases the efficacy of messages so that signs that are out there can efficiently make their message known. So the current sign code has not been comprehensively changed since 1989. It does contain quite a bit of terminology and definitions that are dated, and it also lacks some more recent definitions that staff could use to better implement the code. The sign standards, because they are not content neutral, are not consistent with the Supreme Court's determination. And as well, the document is 48 pages, so in your current zoning ordinance, it is quite a hefty chunk of paper, which makes it challenging to navigate just flipping between the pages. It's easy to get lost for the average person who may be visiting our code for one time to put up a small sign. And with that, not only are there a lot of pages, but those pages are dense with text and contain 33 different sign types. So again, navigation is just a bit of a challenge. So you can see here, not only do we have 33 different sign types, but these 4 example signs could right now under our current code fall under 4 or 5 different sign categories. And for someone looking at them quickly, they may appear to be very similar in terms of their size, perhaps their location, their purpose. And so our goal with this amendment is to ensure that we are not overcomplicating things for ourselves and for our customers, whether that be the general public, residents, sign companies, etc. So as a reminder with the Reed versus Town of Gilbert decision, they were very key on content neutrality. What that means is basically, the short of it, you can't read the sign to enforce the code. So you don't need to know the message in order to know what sign type it is. That would be the takeaway. However, it doesn't mean that we can't regulate signs, and there were a number of categories that the court determined were acceptable types of provisions, including safety, aesthetics, the size of the sign, what the sign is made out of, the lighting, or if it is or is not illuminated, what type of illumination, as well as if the sign has moving parts, and if it is a permanent fixed sign or is a portable sign. And so our proposed sign code does identify sign types by features such as zoning, location, duration, and features of the sign instead of content. So again, we should not be reading the sign or the graphics to determine the sign standards. And the reason we use some of these categories is you would not expect a sign located at a typical commercial center to be the same as a sign on a single-family residence, nor would you probably expect the sign at an entrance to a community to be the same as an entrance sign at a commercial center. Perhaps a temporary sign would have different standards than something a bit more permanent as that. So to give you a bit of an idea of the approach that we've taken, as we said, we are definitely looking to reduce the text. Right now, we're currently about half of the length of the previous code, have significantly reduced the number of sign types, and the bulk of the regulations themselves are housed in a chart or matrix so that the users can easily find information. The format is consistent so that someone using one type or looking at one type of sign can easily flip to the next type and find the information in the same place. You can see one of the key things is, do you need a permit or not? So that is located in the upper right-hand corner and is for all sign types, all permanent signs, easily accessible. A brief definition is provided when necessary. There are also illustrative images to provide examples of what we're referring to with a particular sign type, as well as all of the general standards applicable to this particular sign type: height, size, sign area, illumination, etc. And I would like to point out that the vast majority of all of this formatting, as well as all of the illustrations and the work that it really takes to make this look the way it does, has been provided by Lori Deaver. So she's been doing a lot of the legwork to make sure that our code is usable and has a really good professional finish. So to give you a flavor of some of the sign types that we'll be providing with our new code, right now we do not currently permit projecting signs, which are those signs that stick out from a building essentially more than 14 inches. The new code proposes allowing these types of signs, which provide for a variety of pedestrian-friendly elements as well as interest, and they can take a variety of forms as you see here, whether hanging from underneath a canopy, projecting from a building as a small pedestrian-oriented sign, or even as a larger, as the pizza sign shows. We've also codified some creative installation methods. Right now, our code does not specifically permit lettering to be above the canopy, even if it's below a roof line. So this is something that we thought should be encouraged in order to have a variety of sign forms that are unique in nature and provide a nice aesthetic appeal. We've also included allowances for up to 33% more building signage for a non-residential use. So these would include both your typical wall sign, as you see in the photo, as well as awning and attached canopy signs. So right now, the way our sign code calculates building signage, the business or use would get 1.5 linear feet for every foot of frontage, or square feet for every linear foot of building frontage or the frontage of their use. So that's how we would calculate basically the bucket of signage that they can use on the building. We're increasing that to 2 square feet for every linear footage. In addition, we're combining the building wall signs with the attached canopy and awnings so that depending on what use they are, where they're located, what the shape of their building is, or all of those features, the user can decide what type of signage works best for them and choose to use more or less of one or the other to fit their needs. So it's just another way to have more flexibility and allow the user to customize signage to meet their needs. This is just another example of a wall sign that this would fit into this category. And here, an awning sign, as well as a canopy sign. Another major change is creating a hierarchy for freestanding monument signs. Currently, we have one allowance, one type, and one set of standards for all of our freestanding monument signs. However, the size and shape of the locations, the commercial centers, and other facilities that use these signs varies greatly. So a very small commercial center that has 50 feet of frontage on a street has different needs than a very large commercial center, say at the intersection of Happy Valley and Lake Pleasant. As a result, right now, many of our larger commercial developments that are located within planned area zoning districts, development zoning districts, have customized sign standards in order to meet the needs of those high-speed, high-volume roadways. Instead of having to create all of those separate standards, what we've done is created a hierarchy where larger commercial centers over 1,000 foot in frontage get primary monument signs. These can be 8 to 16 feet max, depending on the classification of the roadway that the center is located on, and 48 square feet in area. The secondary monument signs would be permitted for those centers that have less than 600 linear feet of frontage, as well as for much larger centers, it's basically an additive effect. So for very large centers, they could have a primary monument sign, they could also have a secondary monument sign, and they get more and more signage the larger the frontage is. So when you have a lot of frontage, it makes sense that more frequently you're likely to have more driveways, you're likely to have more users and more tenants, more buildings even. So this really just allows the signage to fit the scale of the commercial development or non-residential development. So those secondary monuments are a little bit smaller, a little bit shorter. And then we have a third category of internal center signs. These are intended to be, to allow every single parcel or lot within a center to have some type of small freestanding signage so that they could identify, perhaps if they would like to identify a drive-through, if they would like to just have a small sign specific to their business. This allows all of those individual parcels to have a small sign to fit their needs. Another change involves our temporary signs. Right now, our temporary sign types vary depending on the use, and this was directly contradicts the outcome of Reed versus Town of Gilbert. That specific case involved temporary signage. So this is an area that we looked at very closely to ensure that we were not differentiating between the types of signs that are allowed, the size of them, or the duration, depending on the use. So these are just a few examples of the types of shapes, sizes, and characteristics that may fit into a temporary sign. We are not looking at the message at all, and therefore you can see there's a wide variety that would apply for whatever the property owner is interested in. All of our temporary signs for non-commercial or non-residential properties require the property owner's written permission. However, if this is on the resident or the owner's own property, they can place a sign of their choosing. So this is very much like the TSA. It's 3331, so you can have it up for 3 months, 3 feet in height, 3 square feet in area, and 1 sign. Additionally, another type of temporary sign relates to undeveloped property. So those undeveloped parcels that are currently vacant do have the right to have signage. The proposal would have 2 separate sets of regulations depending on the parcel size. So for those very small parcels that are less than or equal to 1 acre in size, typically commonly found for a residential parcel size or a very small commercial parcel, they would have a sign, be allowed to have 1 sign limited to 3 square feet in height, or 3 square feet in area and 3 feet in height for up to a year. No permit would be required for this, so it could be placed at the property owner's will. For those larger parcels, right now you may be very familiar with some of the signs that are out there on undeveloped properties, especially as you go into northern Peoria. And for those parcels greater than 1 acre, they would still be permitted to have signage. However, the signage would be based on the linear frontage of that property. So every property over 1 acre could have at least 1 sign. If they have more than 600 linear feet of frontage on a road, they could then have another sign. So that would allow a little bit of additional signage for those very large parcels, but it would basically prevent someone from over-concentrating signs on a very small parcel. Those signs could be larger. The typical sign size for many of those signs right now is basically the size of a sheet of plywood. So it is they are 4 by 8 generally, and this would allow it to be up to 8 feet in height, and they would be permitted for 1 year at a time with 2 one-year extensions. So essentially the sign could be in place for 3 years as long as the applicant received their first permit, came back in, had received their renewal, and received that third sign permit. This would allow us to ensure that the sign has been maintained and is in good function for that duration. So instead of having 1 sign up there for 3 years that may be decaying or in bad repair, having that renewal period is a check and balance. So those are just a few of the types of signs that we're looking to change. As I mentioned, the handout that you have provides the vast majority of all of our signs in terms of the actual regulations. The general regulations are about another half of the code, and that's something that we would expect to bring back for you. That's a little bit more dry, and a lot of it is the background work that we wouldn't expect that the average resident or business owner would necessarily dig into on a regular basis. So our goal is that the main regulations that would affect someone trying to get a sign permit can be easily maintained or received in the table or chart that is in your packet. The other regulations cover a lot of the background things as well as enforcement. So that's something that we are still drafting and that staff has gone through a number of iterations through both our department as well as other departments to ensure that they meet all of the requirements of the various users for implementation and enforcement. So just to recap, we are looking to produce a code that promotes a very high aesthetic environment and that is suitable for the city of Peoria while allowing a wide variety of messages to be expressed and to do so in an effective manner. We will have projecting signs and creative sign elements permitted, as well as allowing a balance of permanent and temporary signs so that all users can find something that fits their needs. So as we've gone through our initial development, we've gone through study sessions with both this commission as well as City Council, had a stakeholder meeting. As you can see right now, we're a good halfway through the process. We'll be coming back to our stakeholder group to go through the specific draft materials. And then with that feedback, also going back to City Council for study session. before we come back to this commission for an actual recommendation. So we expect that that will be happening in the next few months. So you'll probably see us back here very shortly, sometime after the new year. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions you may have.
Do any commissioners have any questions? Commissioner Golden? Yes.
I do have a question. You know, with every topic we cover, there is always progress. And I'm just wondering if you look down the road to see what you see coming next in terms of, you know, technology changing signs or whatever. An example is, as a real estate agent, I can tell you this, you know, the for sale sign that sits in front of your house now, you can have it lit. So, I mean, that's something that, you know, 2 years ago I wouldn't have thought about, and now that's going to be the next wave is everyone's going to have a lit sign. So.
Commissioner Golden, that specific example, that was not something that we had heard from our stakeholders as an interest. Certainly, in general, one of the things we looked at is what technologies may be coming down the pike, and we definitely asked our stakeholders what they saw. There were some things that may not be far enough down for us to create regulations that would effectively manage, or you know, it's a bit of an unknown still, but certainly we are looking to see what would make sense for the city. Again, always creating that balance between the rights and needs of various users. So for that specific one, it's not one that we had heard yet, but definitely something that can be taken into consideration. Of course, in residential areas, lighting is much more of a something that we look to control. So.
I mean, I would suspect technology is going to change the way signs look in the near future. Yeah, so I'm just wondering if the regulations we're creating today are even thinking about tomorrow.
Yes. So. And Commissioner Golden, and many of the regulations we looked at not pinning them down to a specific technology. So for instance, not specifying a particular type of light bulb that could be used or light element, so that we don't get stuck. If there's something beyond LED, for instance, we wouldn't want to only allow LED now and become outdated quickly.
Okay. So. And the other question I have is some of our mega communities within Peoria, do they have to abide by these, or can they put on regulations that maybe restricts the size of the sign?
Commissioner Golden, so if a development already is subject to a planned area development standards, they could have their own standards for signage. In addition, if there are CC&Rs or other private regulations, they could restrict what could be permitted on their property, as well as a property management company may have additional restrictions above and beyond what the city allows. Either way, the property owner would have to provide permission or authorization for the sign to be put in place. So for instance, if a tenant is located in a shopping center and the shopping center requires all red letters, that's not something that the city can require. However, that property owner perhaps has that regulation. So.
Okay, so then they could do something less. They couldn't do anything more than what I would assume. You couldn't do anything more than what's prescribed. But they could do something less than that.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Nelson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I wanted to follow up on that, not be able to do something more. So we're spelling out the maximums here. So we couldn't do like a special overlay district or overlay over a property, for instance, to allow a little bit of extra signage, maybe 10%.
Commissioner Nelson, that's actually a good, that would be an exception to the not do anything more. In that case, there's literally a different rule that applies. So if the site is subject to our sign standards, they couldn't do more. However, if the site has other regulations, such as an overlay district or a planned area development zoning, that essentially becomes the regulatory document. So for instance, you will also be seeing down the pike likely overlay districts for the sports complex or for P83, as well as the auto district. with the understanding, just as you said, that those are different districts with different characters that may have, it may be important to have different regulations that impact them.
Great, that's great to hear. Thank you for that. And as a follow-up to that, so in our city, does the planning director have any discretion to maybe meet with somebody who's saying, you know, I'm having a challenge coming in at your maximum. I want to add a small cabinet. I've added, say I'm a pizza place, and I have a wine bar I've opened up within my pizza place. And I'm a small business owner. I don't want to tear down my monument sign. I want to put up just a small cabinet attached to my existing monument sign. Is there an avenue for somebody like that to be able to sit with the planning director, sit with the planning staff and say, can I get, you know, as long as it's not 5 or 10% over the maximum I'm allowed, there's some wiggle room there, or is this a hard and fast?
Commissioner Nelson, there wouldn't be something that would specifically allow an increase in signage for that specific type that they're over. However, as part of having that kind of basket or toolbox of tools with a variety of different sign types, we often do work with business owners to help them see what may meet their needs. So for instance, they may come in asking for additional building signage when they say, what I really need is a way to advertise for a special sale that I have. And we can guide them into some of those other avenues that may be appropriate. So for instance, window signage is another way that they could gain additional exposure. It may be a matter of adding special promotional signage or some of those other types, and we can kind of look through that whole basket of choices to help them if they're not familiar with those. So.
I had one more question. Unrelated to that, thank you for that. And by the way, I do want to thank you, Ms. Deaver, for the great work you did formatting this. I'm glad you pointed that out. I'm a very visual person. I love this, and I think business owners and non-business owners in the city are going to really love this too. But what I wanted to ask the question about was the inspections you meant, or that you said that I think it was acre plus, or maybe it was even under an acre, those signs on vacant property that would be inspected before they could renew their permit another year. Before they could, there it is, yep. Yeah, they could, before they could, 1 year max, then they could renew for 1 year addition 2 times. The inspection of those signs, is that kind of on the honor system that the applicant says it's in great shape, or do we send a code enforcement officer to look at that?
Commissioner Nelson, the expectation at this point isn't that a physical inspection would need to occur. However, photographic evidence could certainly be provided with that kind of re-up process so that we could see that the sign hasn't deteriorated.
Okay, great, thank you. That's all I had.
Okay. Any other questions of staff? Well, I too, Lori, you did a great job. It's wonderful. It's very easy to follow, which we appreciate. Okay, next item is, are there any comments from public? No, we'll pass on that. Reports from staff. Does staff have reports?
We do. Madam Chair, Commission, just a few items. So first, as you see up here, we are switching to a new notification method, I guess. It's still the same method. It's still the postcards, but typically we send out these smaller postcard-sized postcards that gives a general map, a description, contact information, and the hearing schedule information on it for any cases requiring public notification. Those postcards we've had over the years, we've had some complaints that they're a little small, a little hard to read. Maybe they get lost in the mail. So we're switching to a larger postcard. It's about half a sheet of paper. They're about 5 by 9. So we can get the same information on there, maybe larger font, maybe a little bit more information. So it should be a little bit easier for our public, any viewers at home. If you see something like that show up in the mail, it's our standard mailing that we do send out. So just keep an eye out for the little bit larger postcards. We do send them out for notice of application, notice of hearing, notice of decision. So the process doesn't change. It's just the actual format. So that's the one thing coming up. The second, tonight you got updates for the zoning ordinance. It's a reprint and kind of a remodel, if you will, of the zoning ordinance. It's smaller in size. There's a little modernization to it as well. But there's 2 chapters missing, and that's by design. There's section 34, which is the sign code, which there's no sense in printing out a very large section that's only going to be turned around here real soon for you. So that section's been left out. So don't replace that piece, or don't remove that piece from your zoning ordinance when you when you update it. And then the other one is Section 42, that's the Old Town Mixed Use District. That is also underway. There's an amendment underway on that section as well. So hang on to the old one, and then we'll get new ones to you here shortly. And then last, do we have our meeting dates? Yes, our next meeting for this body will be December 15th. It's a regular meeting here in this location. With that, I'll answer any questions if you have any.
Commissioner Nelson, do you have any questions?
I did. My apologies. So Prop 400 did not pass. I don't know if we can talk about this now, but I was just curious, what's next for the city as far as a contingency? Is it just, are we going to be bringing this to a future council, a commission meeting perhaps to talk about what we can do without that funding? Just kind of what's the next thing?
Commissioner Nelson, yeah, with that not passing, there's really maybe some time to regroup as a city, see what our options are. We really don't have a contingency plan per se. We were really wanting to leave that up to the voters to see what direction we were going to be given. And so by it not passing, we kind of have our direction. So we have to look internally, see what our options are. As far as bringing it back out, there's been no discussion of that being sent back out.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Seeing that there are no other questions or reports from the commission, then I will say, seeing no further business, I call this meeting adjourned.